Well, welcome everyone to Harvard Extension School's Creative Writing and Literature Student Club. I'm Carly-Rae, the current president of our Creative Writing and Literature Club, and this is a literary hour where we chat all things the literary process. Today we have Root literary agent Samantha joining us. Samantha represents a variety of authors at Root Literary, including Jennifer Blake, Lauren Blackwood, and more. Samantha, we are so excited to have you. Tell us where you're joining us from.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm joining from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've lived here for 2 years now, and popped around the coast, Florida, New Jersey, New York for a little bit. So yeah, excited to be here and answer any questions and just talk all things books.
Yeah. Well, you're a literary agent at Root Literary, and we recently had Melanie join us. Can you share us what drew you to Root Literary?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Mel's talk and she's so brilliant and so just like experience. And I think that's really what drew me to the team. We really believe in collaboration. And I think even as individual agents across, the East and West Coast, we really believe in helping each other. We have a variety of expertise. We just hired a new agent, Andrea Blatt, who's incredible. She does nonfiction and book club fiction. And so I think we've officially covered all the bases in terms of category and genre. And so we really believe in like supporting each other and setting each other up for success. So I really just love the team. I've always admired like Holly Taylor's list when they were the first agents who started the shop. And so being able to join just like such an illustrious group of women has been such an honor and it's been a blast for the past 5 years, if you can believe it.
Now, Root Literary is known as like a boutique agency. So for writers looking at potentially querying agents, can you share more about like what a boutique agency means?
Yeah, so it's mostly about kind of like size, and like areas of expertise, I believe. So some of the larger agencies are wonderful. They have speakers bureaus, they have like TV film components, and that can be really wonderful depending on your platform and what you're looking for in terms of like holistic representation. But the way that we work as a boutique is that we're really like focused in the authors that we represent. Obviously, because we're a limited number, we can't represent everyone, but we really are committed to the creators that we work with. So across illustrators, nonfiction, adult, we and children's, we want to make sure that we're able to like support you across the different phases of publishing. And so I think the boutique speaks more to like the attention and the closeness and the size of the team versus like scale and all of the different moving pieces.
Yeah. Now, what do you think sets Root Literary apart from other agencies? I was looking and you have a focus on debut authors. So is
Mhm.
that one of and like being able to work closely with authors as you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of different things that set us apart, but I would say if like I was pitching Root Literary, I would say the biggest thing is really just like, again, how intentional we are. We really believe in like transparency and communication. So much about publishing can feel very secretive and vague and like, what does this even mean? And we really believe in empowering our clients with as much information as is helpful to them, right? So, we offer a portal that's exclusively for our clients. And so in that we're like breaking down foreign rights trends and like what does this mean when there are things kind of popping up in the marketplace, like people moving genre. We'll talk about what does that look like if you are interested, here are some steps to take to really make sure that you're equipped and know the landscape if you are willing to interested in experimenting in a different category. So I really think it's empowering with information, transparency, and yeah, really being really focused on our clients, even across the board. So, yes, we love working with debuts, but we also love working with veteran authors and helping them at the stage that they are, whether it's a pivot or just expanding on what they're already doing well.
Now on Root's literary website, there's like a whole section for artists. So like do artists send query like drawings exactly how you would think a writer would a manuscript or like I was going through and you have all the different pictures and like
Yeah.
spotlight them. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't represent illustrators particularly, but my colleagues do. And from what I've heard them discuss, it's kind of a similar but slightly different. So it's more about a portfolio. Usually, illustrators will have websites where they have their own art and different versions of it. Like if they're doing cover arts, if they're doing graphic novel spreads, so what it would look like across two pages instead of just a singular, character art, all of the things that they're interested in doing that they submit with their package and like explain a little bit of what what areas of interest they have. And so the combination of those two things are like how the illustrator agents will assess what makes sense for them. Um, I think it's about style. I think it's about what areas they want to look in. It's about the relationships that those agents have and if they feel like they can support them. So I love art of all kinds. And so I will look and be like, oh my God, that is so pretty. But the conversations that they're having about, oh, the movement and, like, does this feel emotive? I'm like, yeah. But it's really fun. And I love seeing the projects that they get to work on. And there are occasions where, like, we'll have an author, and then we'll be able to pair it with one of our own artists. And that's a really fun team effort when everyone's involved. So I love seeing that happen.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your list and what you represent. You mentioned you're always looking for high concept, commercial, and upmarket fiction that represents diverse, marginalized, or underrepresented voice with all or nothing stakes. Can you share more about the genres and projects you're currently looking for?
Yeah, so I feel like this year I've just been saying I want to be surprised, which feels very vague, but I also think it like opens it up so that people don't feel like I'm being too hyper specific. So I kind of rep across the gamut in terms of adult to YA. Right now, I've just been focusing on the adult list while I see how the landscape with some of the like library shifts take place. I want to feel like I'm informed and equipped to advocate for that space as all of those things are moving and adjusting. Although I do still have clients who work in adult as well as in the kid space. Right now, though, I'm really looking for book club fiction that has a little bit of a genre element to it, whether it is leaning like speculative or kind of thriller, mystery, that kind of thing. I'm finding that genre blends have a great way of like cutting through the noise sometimes, and being able to attract more than one type of reader. And then I'm always going to be a genre fiction girly. So I love romance, I love fantasy, I love horror. I would love more horror. I think we're starting to play around with like different kinds and what that looks like. What does fear look like for different communities, especially? And so I'm always interested in seeing how people can like play around and surprise me and terrify me all in one. So,
We we recently had John Cusick on from Folio Literary, and he was talking
mhm.
about rom-coms with a twist. Are you interested? Like, it's not just a rom-com,
Mm.
but maybe there's a ghost or some sort of paranormal thing going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always interested to be surprised. I probably don't do a ton with a ghost because I'm like, how does this logistically work? Like, are we married legally or is this like a My Strange Addiction type thing? Anyway, um but I do love kind of like fresh approaches and concepts. I think I always say that for me, I always read a little bit of romance, but I probably became a romance reader in 2020 very seriously. And I think that was because I was starting to see more of a growth of like very clear individual arcs. And then that kind of satisfied in each person's individual journey, but also in their romance and being affirmed and, coming into your own identity. So, yeah, I think I love romance with a like deep character work and like caring about the people falling in love as much as their love. So that's been really fun. Yeah, surprise me. I'm here for it. I mean, I think everybody's watching the same media right now, so like heated rivalry, having a great time. Would love to see more different kinds of representation in romance. Yeah, the sky's the gamut. What? Sky's the limit? Yeah.
You also mentioned book club picks, and there's been a lot of like discussion about that. Can you elaborate more on like what you mean by a book club pick?
Yeah, so less a book club pick and more just like book club fiction in general. I think it's hard to know if something's a guaranteed pick, but I think something that has a lot to discuss, right? Like you can take up this book and because of how many different things that there are to talk about character, about, morality or individualism or what does community look like? What does it mean to be a woman in like this particular space? All of those conversation pieces I really like in my fiction because the world like is constantly evolving. Like we're dealing with tech and AI. So like what does that look like? I saw a query recently where it was about like someone falling in love with an AI, which reminded me of that movie Her. And it's like, yeah, if you're thinking about post-pandemic, we all like were experiencing that feeling of like what like I'm missing community, I'm missing connection. how can I find that? And it's not always easy to make friends as an adult. So how does tech potentially like influence that? And what does that mean for society overall? So that's exactly the kind of thing that like makes me feel like we could have a lot of different conversations about it. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it feeding something, but can it be perverted? All of those questions.
So you are currently open to queries and you asked for the first 20 pages and the synopsis. What do you hope to see in those submissions? Like, are you looking for more dystopian right now, rom-coms, or just, as you said, anything that catches your eye?
Anything that catches my eye, I think I've been hungry for a dystopian because I think that's the next evolution of romantasy. Um, and I'm curious to see what that looks like, and how we can come at it from a fresh way. I think dystopian can sometimes be heavy. And I'm wondering if there's a way to have a little bit of hopefulness maybe in our characters and what that looks like for the larger world. But yeah, just kind of open to seeing things. I think sometimes I can, like in the past, I've been like, I want this specific thing, and then be completely surprised by something else. And so yeah, this year I'm going to be really open. So all of the genres you see on Query Manager and my website are what I'm best fit for. But feel free to try me for anything, and who knows? Maybe we'll both be surprised.
And I saw Veronica Roth is writing a new dystopian, so that
I
will be coming
did.
out.
And I was like, see, I tried to tell people last year it was happening and no one listened to me. And now I'm like, there was the announcement of like Daggermouth. Obviously there was the Ariel, I forget her last name, but she had Conform come out. And then Silver Elite came out. So there's a couple that were like setting the stage for it. Yeah, yeah, Daggermouth is on my list. So hoping to read that very soon. And so all of that is kind of like speaking to it. So I think we're gonna see that take even more of an uptick in the coming years.
Yeah. Now, if you get a query that has a similar feel to a current author you already work with or represent, but you do think it's a good query, what do you do? Do you pass it to another agent or, it's too similar so you don't proceed forward?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what it's similar in. If it's similar in concept, then, that's probably something I'll likely share with a colleague. But if it's like maybe voice, I want to see as I read if there are distinctions. Like if, one client is likely to go like this, like maybe more contemporary, and this person's more likely to go more paranormal, or, this person's pacing is always going to be breakneck, but this person's character development is slightly different. I think it's just my specific brand of neurospicy where I do kind of zoom in really closely to try to define those lines in my list. But yeah, if it's something where like on more than one level, it's too similar, then I share with my colleagues. Um, it's hard to know maybe externally how we all overlap, but Holly had said in my interview with like the agency is like a mosaic. So like we fit together seamlessly, but we also all know where the lines fall. And so I'm able to kind of tell really quickly, like, oh, this might be a Melanie book or an Alyssa book, and kind of kick that in internally as opposed to like someone knowing exactly from the outside.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about the query itself. For you, what makes a successful query? Is it like having the hook at the beginning, reading like having a writer read a lot of back covers and like, see how all those stakes are conveyed?
Yeah, for me, I think, and this might be like the wildest statement ever said, but for me, I like a short, quick query, so I can get to the pages faster. So just knowing, like where we are, like, is this contemporary, is this speculative, like who our main folks are, and just getting to those stakes as clear as possible. That I just need to know so I can dive right in. I never go through like a singular query and log out. So I think the sooner you can set my expectations, the more I can like dive right in and assess for myself if this makes sense for my list. So just that like brevity, clear character setting and stakes will just get me to those pages because I know query letters are hard. I've done consultations for them. I've been asked to write one and I'm like, I could not do this. So I always have a lot of grace without like it doesn't need to be perfect. I just think the formatting and like brevity will always be the right move so I can get into those pages sooner.
Yeah. Now, what about comps? We've had a lot of discussion with agents about
Mm.
that, and there's been discussion even comparing it to, Tell Me No Lies or use like a Netflix movie or what do you recommend for comps?
Yeah, for me, I think I want to know that you are tapped into the media space, both with books and with like TV film. So I never mind a like book and media comp as long as it feels accurate. And also like if you want to get specific, that can be really helpful too, because I think the challenge can be like, no, it's not exactly, the other black girl, but like it's about publishing. And so being able to just like highlight those specifics means that you are reading in the category you want to be in, and you're also paying attention to like what projects are in the conversation. So, if there's a movie, I think what was it, Project Hail Mary? That yeah, like if you're, kind of, going to the theater and seeing that movie and you're also reading different books in that same space and that's a great comp for you, more so than you trying to like find another one. I think that's what I want to see. And obviously, I think the sooner within the last 5 years, depending on genre and category, is, ideal. But yeah, I love a mix. I've also been comp to songs. That might be an exclusively me thing, but I like that because I think music is a vibe. And sometimes it does set the tone, for what you're doing. But maybe do three comps if you're going to include a song.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of the trends, the Taylor Swift comparing the books. A lot of like book
Yep,
talkers do that. Yeah.
absolutely. I think there was like one. I can't remember it now, but there was like one very specific song that I was like, I don't think everybody knows this, but I do. And it was very evocative of like the tone of it. And I was like, that's kind of perfect. And I'm not mad that you chose that, but I don't know that everyone would know that song. And like the work to go find it, listen to it, and process it might be tricky, but I mean, they knew
Yeah.
their audience because I got
Yeah.
it.
Now let's talk about the synopsis too, because there's like a lot of information, like how long a synopsis should be. Should it be, beat by beat? How long do you prefer it? Do you want it the entire manuscript summarized, including spoilers?
Yeah, if I'm asking for a synopsis, I do want to be spoiled. Usually the synopsis isn't the first thing I assess. So I usually look at the query letter and then the pages, and then depending on genre or category, sometimes like going to read the synopsis allows me to assess the manuscript without the like um reader in me, like desperately needing to know what happens. Like, if you're able to execute that, incredible. That's what we want. But sometimes I need to know where the story goes so I can assess if it's doing that effectively. And so that's a little bit of why I'll ask for a synopsis. In terms of length, I am not partial. I think probably the longest one I want to read is 6 pages. It doesn't have to be 6 pages, but if you're going like through every single beat, and you want to be clear, I'm comfortable reading a 6 page one, but I think any longer than that, I'm like, okay, maybe we're going a little too far into it. But I know, like, again, different genres, different categories, different POVs, time like lines, those could make it a little longer, for it to be coherent. So I completely understand that.
Yeah. Now, is there one thing in a query or synopsis that immediately makes you give it a pass? Like a one, or maybe like a don't do this kind of thing you can share?
Mm, I think leaning too heavily on theme. Because of like most agents are readers, like it's pretty easy for us to discern theme from just like basic mechanics. Like a girl whose parents left her, and she traveled to a new town and is forced to like reconcile. That's coming of age. That's individual identity. Like I can kind of pick up on that quite clearly, even though all you stated were basic facts. And so spending too much time on theme in a query or a synopsis isn't necessary. I'd rather know the like kind of straightforward actions so that you can keep it to a tighter, again, emphasizing the tightness of a query letter so that we can get to those pages and I can discern theme as I go.
Another discussion that comes up is whether an agent is editorial or not. How close do you work with your authors, and would you say you're editorial?
Yeah, I would consider myself an editorial agent. I came into publishing from a journalism background, so like I think I always like looking at story from somewhat of an analytical perspective. Even as a reader for fun, like I used to just read a book and be like, well, the pacing could have been a little tighter. And like maybe I'm a little bit of a nightmare for that, but that's something that I think in working with my clients I really enjoy. Like I love doing the developmental work together, especially if they're running into any creative walls or they're once we kind of zero in and what the vision for the final product looks like. working together to make sure everything is serving that, scene by scene, character, plot, conflict, all of that. And so, yeah, I love just like brainstorming together. Whenever I read a manuscript, that first pass is always going to be very developmental. And then my second is a little closer to just make sure there's continuity, make sure there's no threads that were left, unlooped and going
Mm,
from there. But yeah, that's the fun part, I think.
yeah. Now, do you want to see only super polished works that needs little editing? Like, would you recommend somebody on their query journey gets it professionally edited, have a writing group?
Yeah, I always recommend a writing group. I think that's just how you grow as a writer in craft generally. You need other people who are kind of weighing in and giving you different perspective on what they're noticing. Maybe if they write in different genres or if they've, noticed and gleaned on certain details. I never suggest that someone has to do professional editing just because there can be an inaccessibility of cost, and I'm not going to assume that everyone can shoulder that on. But yeah, my hope is that you've kind of done several rounds of revision and worked with a critique group or beta readers to get it to its strongest place. That looks like different levels of polish for different people. But yeah, as long as you've gotten it to as best as you could on your own, and then you've kind of sent it off, that I think is the strongest version. And I'm always comfortable working with people editorially because I know there's certain elements you can't anticipate or look for. Like, and that's the same for me too. Like I can edit with a client and then we send it off to an editor and they're like, you guys forgot this thing. And so it really is a team effort. So yeah, as strong as you can with your group and your team, and then, an editorial agent will be willing to dig in a little bit more.
Now, what is it about a project that grips you? Is it the voice first, the character, plot, setting, all of it?
It's different answers for different types of books, if that makes sense. So, like, for me, a romance is so much about voice because I want to hang out here. I want it to feel like I'm laughing. This is a friend who's telling me about how she met the love of her life, and I just want to like listen in and see how it came about. I think with like fantasy or more like world building, I really love the writing and the atmosphere, the ability to both describe where we are, but also keep the momentum and movement going. In book club, I think it's character and emotion and being able to convey that in a very like natural, organic way, again, where there's movement and description, but I can like feel as we go. So yeah, I feel like again, it kind of is not a non-answer, but it really does depend. And I always love a story that like opens in a very like surprising way. And that doesn't mean like literal shock. It can just be, an interesting observation or just really being thoughtful about like how you open, and that could set the tone for atmosphere, voice, or character in a really intriguing way that usually can spark my attention.
Yeah. Now, is there any advice you can give to writers on the querying journey itself? Like it is very selective. So, if a writer does submit, say, 10 queries and they do get rejected, do you recommend they go back and like look at the query and edit it? Are there questions writers should have in the back of their mind as they are like writing their query and getting ready to send out?
Yeah, I mean, querying is a very challenging journey, and I have so much respect and admiration for everyone who is currently querying, preparing to be querying. It is a journey in persistence. I always try to remind people that like your favorite author was also in these similar trenches and probably have rejections in their back pocket as they sit on a bestseller list now and say, "Look at me now." And so that can hopefully be a little bit of inspiration as you keep going. I really believe in looking at your query package. Like if you're submitting and you are getting rejections, I think you can choose the number that it makes sense to observe, but I always try to look for a certain level of continuity. Like if there is, I'm not sure how much feedback some folks are offering or not, but if there is kind of a pattern coming up in the responses, maybe observing for that. Seeing if, maybe you do have a core group of writer friends, maybe seeing if you can find someone who's like in a friend's author group who's not necessarily your core to give you maybe a very like um unbiased read, like someone who hasn't seen multiple versions of it and see if they can glean in on anything. I always recommend forensic reading, and I think sometimes like if it is your like you're concerned about your opening, taking a look at some of the bestsellers and those opening pages or chapters to see like how does it line up? How does the like first 10 pages of the book stop or the first chapter? Like how are all of those things landing and seeing if there is anything worth assessing? I think it can be easy to like over correct because there's so much information. Like, how do you know when to stop? I think you can either approach it from the like, I'm gonna send it out, see what everybody says, and go from there, or kind of assessing at different intervals, like a 10, once you got 10 responses, and then going with another 10 and seeing what you can glean from there. So
Yes.
your mileage may vary.
Now, as a reader too, like, did you always want to have a diverse portfolio when it came to authors you represent? You mentioned rom-coms and say thrillers. So, do you read in a variety of genres? And when you came to
Yeah.
Root, you're like, yes, I want to do like all of it.
Yeah, as a like growing up, I read across the board. Like there were times I would like have an obsession. Like I'm like, oh, I'm reading all of this like historical stuff and I'm like having such a good time and I love this. And I'm like, ooh, the 1800s, like let's spend time here. And then I would jump over and then I'm reading like paranormal and exclusively just like obsessed with that world and then bouncing around to romance and then I'm reading every romance I could get my hands on. And so I think that did influence like my taste as an agent. And I think it also creates a certain level of like freshness. So if a bunch of client manuscripts come in, they're not all the same thing. So sometimes I am reading a horror, and then the next one after that is a romance, and then the one after that is a fantasy. And so I am kind of like cycling through, and that keeps me on top of my personal reading too, because I have to be reading the market books in that space. So it just keeps you sharp. And I think sometimes there are skills from one genre to the other. Like I think I had a conversation with an editor who said horror and romance are actually very similar because they have genre expectations. And we were talking about how you break those down. And I was like, oh, like the commitment to a romance is that you're gonna have a happy ending. The commitment to a horror is that you're gonna be scared. And so coming into it, it's like you get to see how we break those down and consciously or not even in my edits, I'm like paying attention to if we're successfully hitting those markers. And so that can be really fun. And yeah, it keeps me sharp. It keeps me reading a lot of different things. And there are some areas that I thought I would be more focused on. Like I thought I would be heavier in the fantasy space, but I found that romance was something that I could do very unconsciously. And so just being open to how the trends and the market can change and being across those genres has made it really fun and made me kind of fluid in that.
hmm Now, speaking of manuscripts, when you see one you like in a query, do you reach out to the author, do the partial like request, do you do a full request? How does that process work?
Yeah, the idea of a partial request has never made sense to me because I'm like, why would I just limit myself to like another 20 pages? Like, I'm the one who tells me when I stop reading, give me the whole thing. So I usually request a full manuscript when I like a query and the sample pages they sent over, and then that way I can like dig in and really like see how the story comes about after those pages. Does the pace can remain consistent? All of that. And that's really fun for me. And again, depending on the genre, that's when like the synopsis may or may not come to play. There are times where I've like desperately wanted to know how the story ends and like not looked at the synopsis because I'm like, no, they're doing a really great job of keeping me on the hook. So like I could spoil myself, but I won't. And then there are times I've had like my sister look at the synopsis and tell me, I'm like, yes, no. And so that's always really fun. But if it's something where I'm like, no, like it's a thriller and I want to make sure that like we're introducing the threads and the breadcrumbs in a good like sequence, then I might peek at it to make sure. But other than that, like it's so it's so like case by case, but it's really fun.
Yeah, sometimes I'll read the endings of the thriller first just to see if I'm reading it like a writer, like how is this done?
I
But
respect that, but like for some reason my brain will just be like, what does that even mean? And then I remain confused the entire time instead of intrigued. But the synopsis, I'm like, or maybe there are times I've gotten halfway through the synopsis and they're like, and then she said, I'm like, no, no, no. actually, I do want to just read it. And so, so I'll just go through it in that way. And that's always fun. So,
Well, how long does it take you to read a full submission from an author or like a potential new client? Do you sit with it a few weeks? Are you like, okay, let me see, give it a month? Or do you like immediately think like, yes, I want this project to work on?
yeah, if it's so hard because like I think in an ideal world they send it and I'm like that weekend or that week I'm just like squirreled away reading it. But it also depends. Like there are times that I requested something and I'm like eager and then three clients sent me a manuscript and I'm like, "Oh, um, so we're gonna have to put a pin in that. And so I do try to prioritize it. Like I have like very organized reading queues and try to like track things. It does sometimes, I think nowadays it does take me a couple months to get back to a submission, but that's never for lack of enthusiasm. That could just be like edits, a project run submission for or sometimes I request it and the person takes a minute to get back to me and I'm like this was the week, now I have manuscripts in. Like we just missed each other. And so yeah, we just and there are times I dip in periodically when I have time, but I always like I tend to be very like books consume me. So like when I like am able to like fully give it my attention, that can usually be what the delay is. It's just like I can't give it my undivided attention the way I want to.
Yeah. Now, how do you approach a new project? I've heard like literary agents sometimes they'll say, I know I want to work on it because I'm writing notes on the side as I'm reading it, or like
Mm.
I'm highlighting different areas. Do you do the same thing where it's like, oh, yes, this section?
It's usually my emotional reaction. Like I usually have physical reactions when I read a thing. So if I like at some point I'm like, wait, huh? Or why would she do that? Like those kind of like very tangible reactions while I read are usually a sign that I'm having a good time. The talking about it. So like I'll be in editor calls and like this person's not even my client. And I'm like, I read this book and it's about and I'm like again, I'm talking to my sister or like the people my friends and I'm like, this book is like, oh my gosh, it's this, it meets this and as I see myself like kind of lighting up about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're probably gonna run at this. And I usually get like that gut feeling of, yeah, I would like be devastated if I couldn't work on this book, or I can't stop thinking about it and what it would look like to be out in the world. So,
Yeah. Now, if you are reading a project, like after you request the full and you think, oh, this might be better suited for Melanie, do you
mhm.
pass it along to her in the same way you would a query?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll usually say like, hey, here's the pitch. I feel like this would be for you. This element, these are the elements that jumped out at me for why it could be a fit. And then kind of kick it to her and let her have a like first dip at it to see if it does work for her before I like communicate that to the author. Not to like be secretive, but more so that like they're not assuming it is going to be a fit and then I passed it over and then it's not. I want to just make sure that I'm kind of conscious of everyone's bandwidth and emotions throughout it. And so, yeah, that's usually what we'll do. And then if it is a match, I'll like kick it over, usually on Query Manager or whatever platform, if it's a referral, and just make a note to the author like, hey, this is actually really good and I think it's perfect for Melanie or Alyssa, and they're gonna read and get back to you, like fingers crossed. And that has happened in the past where like someone sent it to me first and then Melanie signed it, or something came in through Holly and Taylor and it went to me, or I got something and I sent it to Alyssa. So we really do back channel because sometimes it's again just that like little detail that can make it more for one person than the other.
Yeah. Now, after you read a submission and you like it, do you set up a Zoom meeting with a potential new client? Do you present them like an idea you have for editing to make sure you like have the same vision, take them through the process?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of the introductory call. I know like some folks still refer to it as the offer call, but I believe that once I've read the manuscript, it's as much of me getting to know you as you getting to know me. And like it's like a first date. Like we could go on this and have a really great conversation, but like maybe we don't want to do this again. Like maybe we both were like, cool human, bye now. And so I think the intro kind of take some of the pressure off. And it allows me to come in really honestly about what my edits are and like acknowledge that like perhaps this is not your jam. Perhaps this is not aligned with your vision for what the book looks like in its like final state. And it gives me a chance to get to know you as a person, your process, um, what would look like what your ideal partnership looks like, and then be very transparent about what it looks like to work with me, my communication style, like the best ways that like I move forward. And again, those notes. So we lay it all out there and then we decide if it feels like a fit. Usually over the course of the conversation, if I feel like we're kind of bouncing off each other and we are in agreement about communication and what the book looks like, then I will extend an offer of representation on the call. But also, if we both kind of talk, we're like, this was fun and your notes aren't exactly what I wanted. I'm like, well, it was so cool to getting to chat to you and like hear about your process and clearly I think you're talented and I wish you all the best and you're probably going to find an agent in 4 minutes. But I hope we can still like, root for each other, however that turns out. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of kind of leading it very openly and not making anyone feel pressure in one way or the other.
Yeah. I wanted to shift now and kind of talk about your own personal experience in the literary world. Obviously, you love reading. So what made you wanted to become a literary agent?
Yeah, so I grew up as a reader like most people, and it was really like a huge escape for me, and it wasn't I wanted to be like career-wise I wanted to be in something with words and books. I thought I wanted to be a journalist or a magazine editor, and so I kind of went to school for journalism with that as my focus. And then it was probably in my senior year of college where it occurred to me I'd been carrying books to my dorm all 4 years. And I'm like, you have not cracked a single book open that wasn't required reading. Like, what are you doing? And that's when it occurred to me that, like, hey, this is a job. Like, multiple people are involved in this. And so at that point, I started to like reach out to publishers and internships and do embarrassing interviews because I had no idea what I was talking about. Like in nonfiction rooms, like, yeah, I love books. And they're like, this is a political in print where we do political nonfiction. I'm like, right. Um, Eventually, someone directed me towards the Columbia Publishing course, which was my first foray into publishing. And so that program is 6 weeks with a cohort of like 100 or so. And we talk to people who work in publishing in different departments and assess like, and they kind of talk about their day to day, why they got into the job. And that was the first time that I started to understand the roles in publishing outside of editorial. And so I was particularly drawn to foreign rights because my cousin lives in France and we'd been reading the same books, but it hadn't occurred to me she was reading them in French until I was in college. I was like, oh. And so then that created a thread of like fascination about like what gets translated where and why. And then literary agents who from the conversation I had gleaned were people who like love knowing everything before other people, are so great at starting stuff, not the best at finishing them, and just these very specific personalities that I was like, oh yes. And that led to me kind of starting my career in foreign rights, which I deeply love. And I was a foreign rights manager for a little under 3 years, and then I moved into agenting. Still miss foreign rights because I got to go to Frankfurt. I got to see everybody and just have like just an epic experience with that. And so we'll always love it, and we'll always think about foreign like in conjunction with my clients and like if it has that potential too.
Yeah, we had a Seymour agency, Gabby Cabazut. She's the head of the foreign
Mm,
rights here. She was talking about how in certain countries, you have to rewrite certain things because it's not allowed for the government. So that was really
hmm
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or even like certain translations, like the length of the book grows in German. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
fascinating.
I,
Because it's
I was
like,
looking,
if, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was looking at the different imprint, or, you can buy them online, some of them.
hmm
Like, they're different editions. Yeah.
Yeah, Book Depository used to have it where you had all of the international versions. I used to buy the UK edition of like so many books, but I don't think that website exists anymore, which is sad. I have the UK edition of Daisy Jones and the Six. That cover was gorgeous. Um, so.
We have to send a picture or post a picture of all of your books from the UK
Someday, yeah, I have to.
on your
I'm
new
very bad.
bookshelf.
Yeah, I'm very bad at being online. So that might take a while, but yeah.
Well, I am curious too, like walk us through your day. Do you like start off with new client submissions, go through your query manager? Do you work or and like read through manuscripts, maybe clients, or do you are you a pantser and just kind of go with what, you feel like maybe in the day?
I wish I have ADHD, so I have to have very organized days, otherwise nothing gets done. So I actually start my day with bullet journaling, my to-do list, which is like before I even turn on any of my devices, of like what based on yesterday, what needs to get done, and based on what I have to get done before the end of the week, before I open my inbox, and that potentially changes the trajectory of my entire day. And so I usually start there. I triage my inbox, so I use labels. And so I will label my inbox by things like that. And so usually it's very like inbox heavy to start. On Mondays are my reading days, so I prioritize client reading, requested manuscripts, and queries. So I try to get all of those, like the heavy, deep work done on Mondays, and then I will pop into queries, requested manuscripts, and everything else periodically throughout the week. I also break down manuscripts, like how many pages I need to read per day, depending on when I've set my personal deadlines for sending those out. And so I am very regimented in that way. Maybe I've said too much.
Very organized. I need to start
I
doing the
try.
page
It's
count.
not militant. There are definitely days where I'm like, you were supposed to read 20 pages and you did not. But having the system allows me to be like, well, tomorrow you will now read 40. Or there may be a makeup day. Like Monday will be like, you're reading less of something else and focusing more on like whatever you didn't catch up on. So,
Well, we do have some audience questions in the chat,
yeah.
Samantha. So the question is, what makes a query or manuscript jump out at you in the first few pages? You mentioned having like a strong first, line. Is there anything else on those first pages that you're like, okay, I'm going to keep reading?
Opening in an interesting location or scene. I like I've done a presentation before about opening pages, and there was like a thriller where a girl was like running and looking back at herself, like looking back, and like someone's chasing her, and so having that like immediate sense of intrigue. um there is like a romance that I really liked where like it opens and he's sick and he's like, oh no, like how do people remember, like does anyone remember the first time they fell in love? I do. I was sick and she brought me chicken soup, and we were just like that kind of like deep sense of either setting or stakes or character. And it doesn't have to be like extensive. It can just kind of be a like very soft and gentle open, or it can be very crazy and chaotic. So again, there's not one way to do it, but I've tried to start doing, again, I'm not on social media enough, but I'm trying to start doing like my favorite openings to illustrate what that looks like across a couple different genres, so that you could see like it's not always the same exact way, but there is this level of like, ooh, how did we get here? Like, I want to know more.
Yeah. Another question is there a particular time of year you recommend submissions being sent? Like there is some, blogs you read where it's like submit in December, because you have off and you have time reading, or the summer. Is that true for you or any time?
Um, I don't pay attention to when they come in. I get to them when I have time to. Um, Transparently, like the 2 weeks of the like holidays, I will be going through the queries a little bit, but if I have a request, I'm probably not reading it over that break, simply because I am trying to like reset and recalibrate, and I'm also doing a lot of market reading that I maybe didn't get to in the beginning of the year, so I can anticipate what are the gaps in my list to prep for the following year. So I still stay open because like everybody has lives, and like maybe that's the only time an author can submit. And I respect that, but I may not respond during that window of time. It'll probably either be before we break for the holidays or after, um, especially for requests. Like I might have seen it like right after Thanksgiving and then requested it up into between December, but then like if I see it in December, I might hold it until January, just because of like me not being able to
Yeah.
like dig in. And again, I said it consumes me. So the minute I'm like hooked, I'm like, I kind of want to dig in now.
Another question is there a manuscript that has come to you or a book you've read recently that stuck with you recently and why?
Hmm. So I recently signed a new client. She is wonderful. And her book really stuck with me because it's a little bit of a satire about publishing. And I think because of everything happening in the world with like the museums and book banning and just so much in publishing, I think reading it was like really cathartic in a way that I like couldn't have imagined was something I would ask for someone to send me, which is why lately I've been like, I want to be surprised because I don't think I would have like known to ask for that book. But it's so beautiful and smart and clever and has a lot to talk about. So I really enjoyed that. And then lately I have not I'm just getting out of a reading slump. So I was reading a ton of fan fiction that I'm not going to advertise. But yeah, I have some. I want to pick up the Tiffany Crumb as my next read because I haven't read that one. It is called This Story Will Save Your Life. And so I'm really excited to read that one because it was everywhere. I think it was a book of the month, and it's exactly the kind of like podcast thriller that I like with like the narrator might be not the person to trust in the narrative. So I'm
Mm.
excited.
A good unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Okay. I also am curious about social media for like upcoming or like writers, authors. Any advice on the importance of social media? Do you recommend, a client has a following, or if they don't, they start it, even if it's small, posting regularly, newsletter?
Yeah, so this is always tricky because again, I'm not a social media person. Like I probably post once every quarter. Um so I don't ask people to do something that I'm not fully comfortable doing myself. But there is usually a conversation. Some level of social media presence is recommended just because readers are naturally going to want to find you. Like we all know the book that we read that made us like get on the internet and be like, "Hi, this book changed my life. I hope you're well." And so you want to make sure that there's a place for those readers to find you. I always say find the platform that you feel most comfortable in. Don't push yourself to be something you're not. So if you're not a TikTok person, like you posting TikToks every day is not going to be fun for you or the person because you're just there like it's a job that you have to clock in at. Versus the person who's like, oh my God, I'm so excited. You guys have to grab my book. Like that's the like social media post that you engage with because their emotions are like coming through to you. And so if that's you and you love being on camera and are super effusive in that way, then TikTok and Instagram Reels absolutely the best move. But if you're naturally as an author, you might be more of a wordsmith. And so having a newsletter might be the natural way to go about it. And you can do those like behind the scenes, like this is my process. And, here are the books I'm reading. Here are my favorite craft recommendations. And really find your people that way. And I think that's the intention behind the social media is like finding your people. So if your people are the ones who record video and are super excited, then that's the move and figuring out a creative but also authentic way to do it. I will never forget there was an author whose name I can't now remember, but she put a bunch of media in a blender, like not really, but like fake in the video, and blended it, and then all of a sudden her book came out, and I was like, and I'm sure no one could have coached her to do that. Like she had to be like, you know what would be fun? And that's what resulted in. I think it got like millions of views and she did it for her backlist. And so it went from being a book that like did kind of well to like being everywhere because she just posted that video and it was so captivating. And there's some people who are like crying and they're like, "Oh my God, this book destroyed my life." And all it took was that person and then your book is everywhere. So again, I'm not saying that those are the things you have to do. Like, don't put things in blenders and don't cry if you don't feel it. Um, but those like very emotionally like sincere moments captured in whatever platform makes sense for you are what I would recommend.
Yeah.
That was a
Well,
very
I'm
long
definitely
and winded
Googling that
answer.
video. I'm
Yeah,
Googling the Blender video.
I need to look it up. It was so good. It made me buy one of her books actually. So I love that.
Well, if you find it, drop it in the chat.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it was Sunya Mara. That's her name. It was her YA fantasy. She did a couple different ones. So yeah,
no.
I don't know what her
Okay, we'll
social
have to.
media handles are, but
Okay, we'll look it up. I did want to ask one final question, Samantha. We've had people ask before, like if they are interested in becoming maybe a potential literary agent. You know, you talked about starting with that course and it really helped you. What would you recommend? Like if somebody's like, I'm interested in it, but where do I start?
Yeah, I mean, informational interviews are great, like intro, because then you can just reach out to agents who are maybe working in the space you're interested in, or have some overlap. Like maybe you read one of their books and you're like, hey, I'm curious, like how did this process happen? Most of the time, agents are willing to get on the phone call. The worst that happens is somebody doesn't respond, and it might not be from malice. It might just be like, this did not make it to the main inbox. This got lost in, promotions. So feel free to do that, and then they can kind of talk about their backstory, and sometimes that offers some different options. I think you can just start off at an internship. There are also reader opportunities where you are reading for an agent or an agency in a more like informal capacity, and that can be a stepping stone to then become an agent if they're like you start to ask more questions and start to become more involved in their process and decision making. Um, so yeah, I know for me, the Columbia course was right out of college, so that was why I took that step. But I think if I hadn't done that, I would have done several internships, and they're now shifting it so you don't have to be in New York in order to do them, with an agency or with a publisher. And then yeah, just make sure that they're paid. So that you can, learn and also be paid for your time. So yeah, I think those are all great starting
Yeah.
points.
Yeah. Now, do you attend conferences where authors can chat with you, or do you have any new upcoming events?
Yeah, so I do attend conferences. Um, let's see, what do I have forthcoming? I will be at Romance Lahoma in which is a conference romance-based conference in Oklahoma City in is it August? Nope, I lied. July 30th. So I will be there that weekend. If anyone is in town and wants to come chat to me, I'll be around. And I think that's the only commitment that I have in person at the moment. But again, I'm welcome to reach out to me via email for informational interviews if you want to talk about agenting. And, as more events get posted, you will find that as my singular post on social media. I promise.
Well, there you have it, Samantha. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just thank you all for having me. I'm so glad I could come on and answer some questions, and hopefully it was helpful.
Well, thank you so much for joining Literary Hour, Samantha, and thank you to everyone watching and who attended. I hope you all have a great day.